Okay, well, there it goes. I just saw that you are recording. Good, good. Okay, hey everybody. My name is Jody Frank, and I am here with the Human Services Research Institute to walk you through some general information about the project, but I believe that a lot of you probably have seen some of this information before. So I hope I'm not giving too much or too little information on certain areas, but then we're going to walk through what's going to happen with this record review. So our agenda, I wanted first to introduce us and who we are at Human Services Research Institute and the background of what brought us all here today. Then we're going to go through what your role is as part of this process. And then we'll look specifically at the forms that you're going to be using. As Jessica said, everybody should have a copy. If you don't, reach out to someone and we'll make sure that you get it of the form that you're going to be using to do this record review. And then at the end, we're going to do some practice and kind of walk through what you can expect looking through a record and how to fill out the form. So the first thing that we want to do is introduce ourselves. And as you'll see on this next slide, my picture is not on there because I am not going to be in Vermont with you for the record review. But these are the folks that will be running the groups and will be with you in person. So I'm going to ask Colleen if she could introduce herself first.
Hi, everybody. My name is Colleen Kidney. I'm a research associate at Human Services Research Institute, and I'm really excited to get into this work today. I've been involved in doing these validation record review processes, and I think I'm trying to count them in my head at least 7 other times. And from my experience, it's been really interesting to see how, the framework that we've developed and what we've done to date kind of comes together and makes a lot of sense when we're talking about real people and getting your input on it. So just want to thank you all so much for joining and for taking a lot of your time out to do this process with us. But we find it really valuable and hope that you will at least enjoy it and find it a little bit enjoyable too. I'll hand it off to Jamie.
Hi, my name is Jamie Petner-Array, and I am a policy associate at the Human Services Research Institute. And I think I have been to 5 record reviews, but again, unsure. I will also add that for me, this is when we look at assigning support levels to people, for me, the record review is really what helped it to click. So I do hope that you all coming and participating in that has that same effect for you. And I'm looking forward to talking to you all today and meeting you in person soon. And I will pass it off to our colleague, Jamekia.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jamekia Collins. I am a research assistant at HSRI. This is my very first record review, so I'm really excited to see the process. Thank you all for taking time out of your day to be with us today for the pre-review training. And I'll introduce Jasmine because she is not here, but she will be joining us a little shortly. Jasmine Hepburn is a project coordinator at HSRI, and I'm sure she is just as excited to be involved in her first record review as well. So thank you all.
Also, from what I hear, I'm going to be missing leaf season in Vermont, and I'm very sad about that. So, okay. So now I wanted to talk briefly about the background of how we got here. I assume a lot of people have probably been a part of this process and heard a lot about it, and some may not. So just briefly, the history here is that Vermont identified the need to make sure that money is used fairly and equitably across people and providers. And they are working with, you guys are working with Burns and Associates to explore a payment reform project. And HSRI got brought in to look at the support level framework that you may or may not have seen. I hope you have. To standardize how the assessed needs are tied to the money. So, obviously We want to make sure that the people's needs are matching what their funding is. And then HSRI has analyzed data and created a preliminary framework, which I'll show you in a minute. And this record review is really to confirm that that framework is fitting the needs of people. We used the assessment data, the SIS data, to create this framework, but data is just data. We want to see in real people's lives if this is actually matching up and fitting what we think it will. So that's where this process comes in. These are some basic information about why we do things this way, and it's making sure that we're allocating resources to individuals based on their needs. And it also establishes a way to accommodate individuals with the most extraordinary needs and make sure they're getting what they want. And also promotes flexibility and choice. A general graphic of sort of the overview. This assessment piece leads to the level assignment, and then that in turn will lead to what supports budget and service choices there are. So I don't know how many of you've seen this, but this is the framework that has been preliminarily built. It includes 4 general support needs, as well as a level for extraordinary medical support needs and extraordinary behavior support needs. So this is the framework, and as we get into things, you will see that we've created descriptions for each one of those levels of who we believe will be falling into those levels. And again, this process of looking at records is to validate that and to ensure that it's actually working. So the purpose of the record review is to make sure that the draft support levels that I just talked about will meet most people's needs when implemented. It helps us to determine the amount of support each individual needs as shown in their record and determine the relative support needs of individuals in each support level. So we're looking at it at an individual level and at a group level. So everybody in group 1, are they in level 1? Are they all pretty similar? So the process of this record review is creating those preliminary support level descriptions based on the data, which we have done. We chose 160 records to review. Today is when we're doing the training for this step, the pre-review. You're each going to complete individually. And then you're going to come together and meet in person with your group to complete the actual record review form. And then HSRI will look at those by support level and recommend adjustments to any of the support level descriptions based on what we found during this record review. Couple of things to remember. Your helps will inform recommendations for changes to the framework. You are not deciding final support levels or budgets. This is just a process to sort of see what's working and what's not, and your help is going to get us to that place where it works. We promote a holistic, person-centered approach to support planning. This process that we're doing is only looking at the support levels currently. You can reach out to us with questions at any time. Later on, there'll be a slide that shows you which group leader you're working with from HSRI, and we have contact information in your information packet so that you can email with any questions or concerns. And we always welcome feedback about this process. I'm going to stop. I know we can save questions to the end, but is there anything anybody wants to know about the background of this project before we move on to your role? Okay. I am going to pass the baton to Jamekia, and she is going to take you through this part. And We have some for Jasmine. If she's not here, Jamiki, I'll take back over whatever we need to do.
Sounds good. So as Jody said, I will be talking about your role in the preview process and the in-person record review. For the preview process, which is the training is a part of this process that we're doing right now. The preview form that hopefully everyone on this meeting got, but if not, like Jody said, please reach out and we will get it to you. This form is meant to help you gather information that will assist your group in completing the record review when you meet in person, either on September 26th or the 27th. The form will ask you to take notes on the areas from the record, and we'll have screenshots of what the preview form looks like and what sections you'll need to fill out, so don't worry. And the form must be completed before the in-person meeting. It's in 2 weeks. I don't know what day it is, but we'll be giving you all 10 records, and you have to have it completed before your in-person record review date. For the in-person record review, on the day that you're scheduled to be in person, like I said, you'll need to bring the 10 preview forms and be prepared to discuss with your group in order to answer the record review form questions, which we will show the form later on. And the record review involves taking the information from your preview and quantifying how much support is needed in each area with your group. Next slide, please. So we'll be reviewing the forms. These are the preview forms. The screenshots will be on the next page. There's a question in the chat, but we can answer that after this section. So these are just some instructions on how to complete the preview form. You will review all available documents in the record. You will take notes on the areas documented here, the demographics section, the strengths and goals, special consideration, the general support needs, behavioral support needs, the medical support needs, and the service needs. And there'll be screenshots on I think the next slide that'll show what sections you'll be filling out. So you are supposed to save one preview form per individual record reviewed, and please print these out and bring them to you in person during the date that you are supposed to be in person for the record review. And be prepared to discuss the individuals in your group in person for the record review. Next slide, please. These are the sections I was just talking about. These are the screenshots of the preview form that you are supposed to have. And the intent is to take notes so you will be fully prepared to discuss the individuals from the records during your in-person group session.
And that it's obviously pretty tiny there, but each of these areas just gives you a blank area to take notes on certain types of areas, so medical support, behavior. So it just is a very blank note-taking, kind of giving you some direction on what areas to take notes. And I am going to talk through the in-person record review because I do not believe that I think Jasmine hasn't made it in yet. So I'm just being quiet for a minute to make sure. Yes, and as Jamie said, we are going to practice filling that form out in this training, so you'll be comfortable with it. So I'll go ahead and talk about the in-person. What happens when you get there and you're going to be in a small group with an HSRI staff member who's going to be leading and filling out the form based on everybody's discussion. And there will be, I believe, there'll be a provider in each group as well as 2 state staff and an HSRI staff that will be a member of that group. So again, we're stressing this, print out and bring the 10 pre-review forms that you have completed with you to the in-person. You will have a group discussion to determine how much support is needed and what services are needed. And so for each individual, I'm going to show you the record review form, which you won't be filling out, but it'll be the questions that are being answered. It's really taking your notes on those areas and then saying, okay, well, how much support do we think this person needs and what services do they need? Your HSRI group leader will be recording the information that's gathered during that discussion. And I was trying to see, I don't want to mess up my slideshow by magnifying this, but you can see here there's less text boxes because at this point you're looking at those areas that you took notes on and saying, do they need no support, low, moderate, high, or extensive support? So you're utilizing the information you gathered to sort of make decisions on what types of support you think they need, how often, and what services. Hopefully everybody has gotten a schedule, but this is what the schedule looks like. On Tuesday, the 26th, there are 4 groups. And these are the times that each provider will be coming in to do their group. So we basically have a provider in the morning with each of the 4 groups, and then another provider comes in that afternoon. So that's what we're looking at. Some notes about this process. Consistency, and by that it just means, you know, keep the same thinking throughout the whole process so that you're sort of answering the questions the same for each individual. And it's also within the group to ensure you're talking through that and coming up with a consensus on what the group thinks. Sometimes it may be hard to know how to answer the questions. In the information packet that you received, there's some guidance, further guidance on how to think through some of the questions and ways to kind of answer some of the more difficult questions on support needs. So that packet is there for you to find answers to what you may need, as well as to give some additional guidance on how to answer some of those questions. Well, we got here quicker than I thought. Jamie, are you ready to do practice and I can turn this over to you?
I am. I was just pulling up the form. I do suggest, though, I feel like that was a lot really, really fast.
Yes.
So I think maybe we take a break really quick and see if anyone has questions.
And Jamie, your camera looks like it's on, but it's not. You're just a blank screen.
Okay. I'll see what's going on with that. But not sure what's happening there. While you all are thinking through any questions that you have, please, I'll work on my camera.
We had that with someone yesterday too. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, me neither.
Yes, Jessica.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
I have a question. So what's the average? You must have an average amount of time if you're slating about 3.5 hours to go through the 10 people. So is it like 20 to 25 minutes per person? How does that work? Is that ever not enough time?
Well, what I will say is this pre-review process, you know, from what I can tell, and Jamie and Colleen, who have been through this, jump in if you would like to on this, but this process has changed through the years. As you can assume, COVID changed some of this, and we found some ways to do things virtually. But prior to that, it was all in person. So this is sort of a hybrid. So I'm not sure we necessarily can answer that because you guys are doing a pre-review. So the thought is that you're reviewing prior to and coming in to do the discussion, whereas previously it would be a file review in person, so it took a lot more time. Jamie or Colleen, do you want to say anything else about that?
Well, I would say, and Colleen, feel free to jump in. I'm sorry, I know you're maybe not able to speak right now, but we did. I think that's part of the intention in doing the pre-review, and I think that's kind of what Jody was getting at, is that you will have people on each group will have looked them over. So when we get into the review, it's a matter of discussing, working through, like, maybe I thought that this person had lower needs in this area. I thought this person had higher needs in this area. Here is why. And so we're anticipating that on site, you'll be able to kind of move through them a little bit quicker from having done the work ahead of time. And that was, a decision that we made to really help all the providers be able to participate, since this was really important. So making sure that everyone had an opportunity to spend some time thinking about it before you come, and then coming to that ready to have that conversation, make the decisions, and then fill out the review form.
And I could add to that, the intention is to get through 10 of the records in that 3.5 hour chunk. So we don't want to time each one, because some of the records will be pretty straightforward and clear to everybody, and there won't have to be as much conversation. And so those ones might just last 5 or 10 minutes. And then others may be a little bit more complicated and we'll want to spend more time on it. So really, we're just saying, hoping for 10 records in 3.5 hours.
And Colleen, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's potentially more records that are to be reviewed if there is time, or every group just has 10?
I think that I'm pretty sure just 10.
Okay.
But if it turns out we could review more during that time, we would want to do that.
Every group just has 10, just so folks know.
Other questions, or do you want us to go back through any slides that we ran through quickly?
My only question is, are we okay to fill out the pre-review form by hand, or does it need to be something that needs to be completed in our computer?
I think you can fill it out by hand.
Yeah, me too.
Or you can fill it out on your computer and print it out. You do need to bring them. That's key. You need to bring them, or else it won't have been a good idea for you to have done them if you don't bring them to share.
I do have a question in the chat. I think we have a small group joining, so they've decided to type it. I can read it out from Elizabeth Walters. 2 questions. How will people with complex medical and behavioral needs be scored? And then also concerned to see diabetes management listed under low health management needs. So it can require special care procedure training and is far from an insignificant need. So would like to hear thoughts on that.
I could answer at least the first one. We are still kind of working out the details about how level assignments work with medical and behavioral. We have not gotten to the point in our process yet where we're talking about budgets for individuals, and it may turn out that people with medical and behavioral needs end up having, the same budget. So those are details that are not worked out yet. But we welcome, feedback during this process about what you think about that. The second question, I would say that we definitely are considering any health needs, the support needed for health needs as the support needed. We don't want to think about just, diagnoses or conditions on their own and try to say this one is a low need one, this one is a high need one. We're really going to look at the support needed for them. So the example about diabetes management, I think that we were just thinking about somebody who wouldn't need that much support for that kind of management, knowing that there probably are some individuals who do need a lot of support for that, if that helps.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna to say as well is, every medical issue is on a spectrum of how much support is needed based on how serious the medical condition is, also what supports that person needs in daily life can affect that. So somebody may not need a lot of help to manage their diabetes, whereas another person may need a significant amount of supports. So that's how that works out. Oh, there's another hand, but I can't see who.
Hi, it's me. I'm Jennifer. I am wondering, with the in-person portion, we're filling out the pre-review form, but we're only sending one person as a representative, and the service coordinator for the individuals is not going to be present. So what if during our conversation, things are coming up that me, the person being there, is not going to fully know an answer to? Will I have an opportunity to maybe like call in a service coordinator to get clarification if it's something that I'm not familiar with, seeing as I'm not their sole coordinator?
I will attempt this, but Jamie or Colleen, just hush me up if I'm saying this wrong. Normally, folks doing these record reviews do not know the person. And so this is based on what is in their record. Colleen, I saw you come off mute, so I'll let you say that as well.
Yep, that's exactly what I was going to say. We really want to rely on what's in the record so that it's standard across everybody. We want to make the record process as, objective as possible, objective in quotes. So we while it is a benefit that some of you will know the people that are being reviewed and be able to add additional, information about the person, we don't want to rely on only that. We want the record itself to be the main source of information.
Thank you.
Can I just add, I know, Delana, you put your hand up very respectfully, and I'm just jumping in. But in the event that there was kind of a crucial piece of information that we did want to follow up on, we wouldn't have an objection to trying to reach out to get clarity. Is that fair to say?
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, so I think it's certainly not off the table. I think the hope is that some of the pre-review work would be able to answer the majority of what we're going to need to know, so that hopefully we don't have to do a lot of tagging in.
Thank you.
Also keeping in mind, though, that multiple people are going to be reviewing the records, so there will be a state staff reviewing them and a provider, and then the provider, the provider may have access to information from that reach out that maybe the state staff wouldn't. So just keep that in mind as well.
Delania?
Yeah, I'm glad we're going through this process just to better understand where things do land, because I completely appreciate that we're trying to go through a process that's as objective as possible when we're reviewing people's records. However, human beings are completing those records, and
Yes.
Human beings vary dramatically, especially when it comes to their ability to make sure that things are in the record and that they're accurately reflected, and that they haven't gone through maybe 2 or 3 service coordinators in a shorter period of time. And so I'm glad that we're taking the time to make sure that we're doing the pre-work prior to coming to the meeting in person to be able to review that individual. So yeah, appreciate that we're going through this process so that we can best understand how the tool is going to be utilized in the future. When we're thinking about Vermonters and their support needs.
Okay, Ellen?
Yeah, I want to make sure I understand how we're filling the forms out. So I understand it's a record review, but am I hearing if the record isn't giving us enough information, the provider person should seek out people or talk to the service coordinator? Is that what you're saying? Or do we just base it on what we read?
I would say base it on what you read, but you'd like, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last person who was speaking their name, but if there are actual pieces missing from the record, if you were like, this person's record is not actually reflecting their need, I think that you having that knowledge and bringing that to the table could be really important and good. So if, if the record, you're able to read through it and answer all the questions that are in the pre-review form, just stop there. Don't take any further steps. But if you're identifying actual holes in the record, I think we would be okay with you filling in the gaps a little bit.
Thank you.
Like Kara has a question.
Kara?
Hi, I just wanted to double check. So if we believe all of the, I mean, I guess is that the information form required? So if all the information is already in the documentation that we've provided, you still want us to go through and do that?
Yes, yes, that form will be the only thing um, eh, that comes with you to the on-site where you will be discussing it. So it's really just a way to sort of organize um, what we're going to be looking to discuss on the in person. And we will be keeping those forms afterwards as well for another purpose.
I think it would also be really difficult, I know for me, to try to keep straight what I thought my kind of how I would have filled out the pre-review form for each of the 10 people without actually having recorded everything. So yeah, I would suspect that even if someone thought that they could come without the review forms, you would get a little bit lost in the conversations trying to remember all the details. So it's definitely an important piece.
Thank you.
There was a question in the chat about, I'm assuming meaning sharing the PowerPoint. Jody, I don't know if that already went out or if we can just share it after.
It did. I think that I could be misinterpreting. I think that maybe they wanted it pulled down so they could see the screen better right now while we were chatting, but I'm not sure. Delana, is that what the intent was there on the pull the PowerPoint?
Yes, I was just thinking that it was hard to
Yeah,
see. So
yeah. Sorry about that.
that's okay. That's okay.
If there are more questions, I will remove it from the screen. Oh, and there we are. So
We
I will
do.
remove it.
All right, Claire.
When we complete our record review, one of the pieces of information that we have been sent is the actual SIS-A. So are we basing our pre-review on the information exclusive of the SIS-A or inclusive?
I think it would be inclusive. I'll let other HSRI staff weigh in here, but I do think, it is an important piece of the information, but shouldn't be the only piece of information.
It is definitely inclusive. You are definitely looking at the SIS-A, looking at how the respondents answered that, but also considering the records. This is the chance to really look more
Global.
holistically at the person, look at all their needs as referenced everywhere, and confirm that what is in the SIS-A is, actually reported correctly and can accurately describe their needs. This is that confirmatory step.
Thank you.
Kara?
Not trying to be a burr in your fur.
No, not at all.
So it kind of seems like we're the ones that are doing the validation study if we're including both the SIS-A information and the record information instead of someone objective doing the validation. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around around this. And so if someone else is looking at the records, I guess I was thinking that it would be somewhat objective that would be comparing the two and then have our input. But if we're looking at information from our records and the SIS-A, it kind of feels like we're doing the validation piece. So I'm a little confused.
I can start that one. So what this validation is for, what we're doing in our process is validating the framework. We're not looking to validate the SIS-A itself. The SIS-A has a bunch of information outside of what we use for our framework. When we assign people to levels in the framework, we're only using the numbers, the standardized scores. And there's a lot more detail in the SIS than just that we want to make sure is looked at when you're trying to get the holistic view of the person, like Jamie said. And, you know, we imagine that that would also be really complementary to everything else in the record. You know, there may be instances where, because the record is, everything else in the record is a little bit older than the SIS-A, or, you know, vice versa, where there may be some mismatch. And when that happens, we do want to like talk it out and figure it out. But for the most part, it should only be complementary. And the other important thing about this, I think, is that when you come with your pre-review forms filled out, ready to talk about every individual, it's not going to be us just writing down the answers that you think. We're going to want to make this a conversation and build consensus in our groups while we do this work, because this training and, you know, the work that we're going to be doing when we're in person is really going to be about how are we making sure that we're reliably, consistently answering all the questions in a way that makes sense, so that we can get to what parts of the framework work and what parts of the framework need improvement. Yeah, if anybody else has anything to add, please go ahead.
Yeah, I would add that we always, well, not always, but most often we include people beyond, you know, like a broader group of people. So that might include people with disabilities or family members or support coordinators. In this scenario, you know, we are including providers, which I think is, you know, a really good way to get kind of the depth of information about people, since you all will, or people in your organizations, I guess, will be more familiar with the individual. So it is kind of nice in that way to also just be really inclusive in this process and think about, you know, how much sense it makes, and if there are changes that we need to make to help make it even better.
Thank you.
Samantha?
Hi, yes, thank you. This was a question for Jessica Bernard. We just have, I know I have at least one SIS-A report that we haven't gotten from PCG. We're trying to get that from them because it was a recent one, I believe. Do they know that that we're doing this, and if we're reaching out to them for a copy, could there be a nudge to just make sure they're getting those out to us so that we have them to be looking through?
Yeah, they do know that we're doing this. I think the sample was actually created a couple months ago, so you definitely should have all of the SIS-As by now, but I have actually pulled all of them. So if you want to just send me the name, I can turn it right around to you. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Jess.
Yeah, no problem.
Are there any other questions, or are we ready to move into practice? Questions are okay. So I think somebody said that they were being a thorn, but that is not true. It's better to have your questions answered. Ellen.
So I read through the material that Jessica sent out this morning, and you know, there's a list of documents that we're supposed to be reviewing, and you said, let you know if we don't have them. So I'm trying to understand, there's an intense review form, intense review supporting documentation. What's the equivalent in our EHR?
And keep in mind, we were just putting down some common documents from, that have seen in other states, and everybody's system is different. So,
Okay.
Jessica, do you want to talk about, what would be considered an incomplete that they really should reach out?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know as though we have an equivalent to an intense review. I don't know exactly what that means for another state, but I
Okay.
think,
Can I
Jamie, yeah,
say
did you
one?
have a?
Yeah, so typically I think what that would be is if anyone, they call them exceptions sometimes intense reviews. But if anyone had requested like a rate or a payment that was, extraordinary or above what, was being offered, just based on, the natural circumstances, then that would be that. So I don't know, and again, not just being incredibly familiar with Vermont, I don't know if you all have things like that, but it would be any sort of like intensive rate or funding or exceptional funding requests for the person. And then if there's any justifications for that, like, we requested this because this person has very extraordinary medical needs and needs nursing staff, 24 hours a day or something like that. Those would be very, very helpful documents to review if you have an equivalent available.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
So I guess our funding requests. So in Vermont, like everybody has a funding request. If it's, even if you would say they have kind of typical IDD needs, in addition to folks who have really higher specialized needs and budgets. So technically, everybody has something like that at some point. But I guess that's a good reminder that if folks have had like a recent funding request or a request for an increase, I'm not sure how you all set up your EHRs, but hopefully it would be in there.
And I think Jody asked a separate question that you were starting to answer, but I did want to make sure I explained what the ask was there, about like if there was a minimum amount or something that was too, where there's really just not enough records or data on a person.
And once I asked Jessica, I rethought. To me, I would let someone know if your record doesn't have enough information for you to be able to do the pre-review. If you just don't feel like you have enough information in that record to be able to do this process, that would be important for us to know.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the same. If you're concerned about what is in the record, I would suggest that you reach out to your team lead, which were on the one slide, and I think they're also in the packet that you've been sent. Our emails are all there, and it says when your organization is coming in. So I would suggest that you reach out to your team lead if you feel that the records are too slim, and we can maybe troubleshoot and kind of think it through and decide what to do. I also would just, I know earlier we talked about if you saw something that was in the record, you would maybe dig or confirm something. And I know that because there are multiple people reviewing the records, I would just encourage you to share that with the state as well, so that they can review. If you find any like additional information, for example, maybe it's a younger person. I haven't looked at the sample, with any detail, but maybe if there was a person who was in school and, there was something in the IEP, the individualized education plan, that you thought was really relevant and you had access to that and were able to share that with the state staff, that you would turn around and share that with them. So making sure that they have access to that you all have access to the same records. And I don't think we spent a lot of time talking about it, but that guide that you all have received in your email provides a lot of information about how to fill out the pre-review form. And it will be really useful. And I think kind of gets to some of the questions earlier about really being objective. I I mentioned earlier that for me, it really clicked whenever I was able to do this process, because I was able to see like, oh yeah, there really are some people who are, you know, really independent and are maybe in some ways, you know, getting more support than they need, because they really could be supported to maybe live a more independent life, and other people really have these very intense needs. So for me, reading through the records and going through that process, it became really clear to me that you know, it does help to do that. So when you look at that guide, I forget what it's called, Jody, but the support and supplemental
Information packets.
information packet. There's some suggestions in there about how to respond to things that would, I think, help you to kind of take a more objective lens in doing that. Are there any other questions? This is great, because all these questions will mean that we're more prepared after we leave. And if you have a question as you're doing it, which is very likely, you are welcome to reach out to either your team lead, or Jody would probably be a-okay as well. All right, I think we're going to dive into the practice, and I am just going to apologize. My camera sometimes just decides to like disconnect itself from my computer and not speak to it. So I do like being on camera, but unfortunately I'm not able to. So you can see this picture of me that it maybe, I don't know if you can, but it's like 14 years old. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share our presentation again. And, you know, if you do have questions, again, just raise your hand and we can address them right now.
Or you're welcome to put them in chat and I'll keep an eye on it. So when we get to the appropriate place, we can do that as well.
Yeah, good thinking. All right, so can you all see my screen? Or the PowerPoint at any rate? Perfect. So we're going to walk through a practice now where we're going to look at a record that was from one of the records that were shared. This is a real person, but we've redacted and changed some of the information to fictionalize it a little bit. And we're going to practice kind of filling out some parts of the form. Obviously, this is a very small amount of information compared to what you would have available when you're looking at the records in total. You'll have a much more holistic view, but this is a super summarized portion. So we're going to start by looking at Sam. And if you do have your pre-review forms handy, it might be helpful to just look at that while we kind of read through the record. And then we're gonna kind of practice filling it in together. So Sam is a 22-year-old man who's receiving services on the waiver. Sam enjoys cooking and doing woodworking projects. He would like to travel, get his driver's license, get married one day, and become a veterinary assistant. He has goals to exercise routinely and to take classes to become a veterinary assistant and also continue his woodworking. He lives with his mother, who supports him on many tasks and routines. He has diagnoses of verbal or oral motor dyspraxia and central auditory processing disorder. He gets therapy biweekly to help him manage and regulate his emotions and help him express himself. He receives or has received in the past supports related to housing, community, employment, service planning and coordination, and respite, as well as clinical therapies. I will pause and Jessica, let you ask your question.
I just wanted to say, I don't think it's my internet connection, but I don't think the slides advanced. So we're not seeing the description of the person. Is that just me?
I'm seeing the description.
Oh, you are?
I can see it.
Great.
Same. Well, then I take it back and it's the team's gremlins. So I'm glad you all can see it.
I can't see it either.
I
if you
can't
can't
see it
either.
either.
So I actually think you all can control the slides the way that I'm sharing it. And if you can, you might have moved it. I'm on slide 26. If you see
Oh.
there's a little arrow.
Yeah, you can actually control the slides. That's
Yeah.
creepy.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
I
odd.
unlock it. I there's this thing that says private view. I've never seen that. And I was like, oh, what's this? And it says prevent participants from moving through shared presentations on their own. So you all have the freedom to move through these slides. And if you can move it, move to 26.
Okay, and for the, I just did that, and then there was a button that popped up that said sync to presenter. So great. Well, that's a new one. Thank you.
Yeah, good problem solving. Way to go, team. See, we're already doing it. Our future is looking bright. All right, so I am going to just kind of pick up where I left off. So we've already heard about Sam, you know, kind of some of his likes, things that he's interested in, how his mother supports him, and some of the services that he receives. So Sam can be alone up to 8 hours a day, but he does need someone available at night and in the morning to help with his routine and help to prompt him. He needs prompts to complete hygiene tasks and sometimes may need modeling on how to complete certain tasks. Without prompting, he will forget to brush his teeth or take his medication and other things. Sam needs reminders to go to bed and get up in the morning at regular times. He does enjoy cooking, but he also needs support to monitor his eatings and ensure that he eats regularly at meal times. He can communicate and understand, but often he needs more time to process conversations. He might need promptings at times to express himself fully. He may say that he understands something when he actually doesn't understand, so he might need some support for those communication pieces. If he feels that he cannot express himself, he might become frustrated and he might shut down. He needs time to process conversations and the space to ask questions or express himself. Sam needs guidance around meal planning, shopping, preparing food, and cleaning up. His mother also supports him in managing his finances. She supports him in scheduling appointments and transporting him, and she needs periodic respite to support her needs as well and to give her a break so that she can continue to be a good support for Sam. He's doing well in his current living setting, but he does require support to make sure that he can keep advancing towards his goals. And that support really does help him to kind of live his best life. And he would struggle without the support of his family and the services that he receives. So I am going to, if it will let me, paste this entire thing in the chat. And I'm going to stop sharing it and we're going to bounce over to a form and we're just going to kind of look at it and talk about it and what we would put in different sections. So if you give me just a second, I am going to transfer over to that. All right, so here is our pre-review form. Let me make it bigger for everyone who needs, like I do, a bigger view of it. So this is our form that we would be filling out. We would just put in our reviewer name. I am Jamie, so I'm going to put that in. And then we're going to put the name of the person. So this person's name is Sam. We don't have the ID here, but you will have an ID number. It's probably the number in the sample, and probably Jody or Colleen can speak to that. And we're going to put the age. So I forgot how old Sam was. Does anyone
22.
have
22.
He's 22.
22? Good listening. And then what setting is he in? We're going to. Where does he live? Does he live in a group home? Does he live, is he receiving in-home family supports? Does he live in non-residential, shared living, staffed living, or supervised living?
In-home family support.
In-home family support. So we're going to go ahead and circle that one since, or underline it or do something. I'm going to bold and underline it. And then we're going to give a short summary of Sam's strengths and goals. So somebody tell me what you heard. And then the fun part is you can watch my typing mistakes as I try to follow along.
For goals, he'd like to get his driver's license. And exercise
He'd like to
routine.
become a vet tech.
Get married and travel.
Anything else we want to add here?
Enjoys cooking.
Yeah.
He has goals to exercise routinely.
A man after my own heart.
So,
I think a
can I
strength is
ask
that. Sorry, I think a strength is that he can be alone for up to 8 hours a day.
I did see there was a hand raised.
Yeah, that was me, Ellen. I wanted to go back. So in-home family supports, I don't know how we know that. I know he lives with his mom, but there's really no indication when or where he gets supports. I mean, it says residential, so I don't know if the goal of us reading this information is to like interpret it or.
So I would have to pass the question of the living settings to Colleen or maybe Jessica about.
It says he has supports in housing, and I guess that could be interpreted in a number of ways. So
Yeah,
I would.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Colleen.
No, I was just going to say, I think that when you're looking at the real record as opposed to our summary, it would probably be a little bit more clear where he lives. But if not, I think that we may be able to identify after the fact where he lives if there's any sort of confusion about it. So while we obviously want the record information to be reflected in here, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if we were unclear whether it was, between two.
Right.
So I was just going to add that the sample we sent actually did have folks' residential status listed, I believe. And so it would be great if folks could confirm that too, in case there's been a change.
Right.
But we think for the most part, most of the residential information that we've pulled should be in your sample already. So confirm it. Otherwise, you can often find on your waiver spreadsheet, there's often enough information about someone's supports and if they're in home, if they're could give you a good picture of that too, if you need to confirm.
Yeah. And I would also add that if the sample is incorrect, which, occasionally may happen, that you reach out to your team lead and let them know. And I do think it is important to know where the person lives because we are going to ask you about services. So, to weigh in on that. And, there might be different services that are available to people depending on where they live. So, I think confirming it seems to be a good idea. And if you have any qualms about what is listed in the sample, then please reach out to your team lead. Or I think Jody can be a default across the board if you're having trouble finding your team lead's name.
And I can say as part of this sample that Sam is in home family support.
Oh,
so
Okay.
Good interpretation, whoever answered that question. And so you'll, just as a reminder, you will have a lot more information than we have available in this one little summary. So do we have any other strengths or goals that we want to add here?
I mentioned that he enjoys woodworking also.
Yeah, woodworking.
I think a strength is he can be home alone for 8 hours.
Yeah, I think somebody added that, but totally agree.
Oh, I didn't even see that. Sorry. Yep.
Oh, no, you're all good. Better to list more than fewer.
I don't know if this will count as a strength, but he's doing well in his current living situation. So that seems like a strength to me and something we want to continue to support.
Yeah.
I think the fact that he has invested natural supports is a strength.
Oh, what a great one to point out. All right, I'm going to keep my excitement off of here. All right, so let's unless anyone has any others to add, and I apologize because I'm sharing, I'm not seeing the chat. So if someone on my team will read anything, if there is anything in the chat, I will add it. Now we're going to move on to notes about any special considerations for this person, anything that we really need to be thinking about. This could be, you know, something that we have to watch out for with him, or maybe like a transition that we want to know, like maybe he's, you know, in the middle of moving from, you know, his record doesn't say that, but this would be where we would note things like that. Like this person is in the process of moving from their family home to a group setting or something. Those might be the things that we want to point out here. Is there anything that jumps out to you as being a special consideration for this person? Or, you know, for some people, maybe they'll have some interaction with like the criminal legal system, or, you know, just things that you want to like flag and note about someone.
I don't know if this would be indicated, but it does talk about how it's a strength that he has strong natural supports in place, but because it sounds like those natural supports are heavily relied upon, if something were to happen to those natural supports, or if they weren't available, that would want to be something that was just put into consideration. And that it appears that although he's able to spend periods of time alone, he has not ever lived alone or couldn't be alone for a 24-hour period of time.
Not knowing Sam, I'm going to be optimistic and say he's looking forward to transition to post-secondary education next semester.
Yeah. He was 22, right?
Yeah, I'm just throwing him in the college steps program.
Yeah. Well, he might have just finished high school, you know, if he was in some sort of transition program or something like that. Wonderful. Any other special considerations we need to be considering? All right.
Like it. Oh, I'm sorry, Jamie. I was gonna say it may go in other places, but I think it's important to note that he can shut down if he's having a hard time expressing himself. So I'd, you know, really want to consider that at every level so that his voice is heard and that he's not becoming frustrated.
All right, awesome. So we're going to move on to the general support needs, and this would be a place where you would hopefully find a lot of information in the SIS assessment, and that you would be kind of bolstering that information with the things that you're finding in the record. So here we're going to just speak a little bit to each of these categories, again, knowing that this is a super small sliver. I keep doing a lot of like animated hand motions, and I forget I'm not on video, but this is a super small sliver of what we're able to find out about Sam today, and that when you're reviewing the records, you're going to have a lot more information. So let's really quickly think about some of his general support needs for daily living. So that would be things like eating, bathing, dressing, getting around and inside the home. And we don't want to only think about the types of support, or sorry, where he needs support. So like if he needs support eating or bathing or things like that, but also what kind. Does he need full hands-on? Does he need, you know, some prompting? What does that support actually look like? Because it can be a big difference when we start looking at individual records.
He needs prompts to complete hygiene, to follow his routines. And it doesn't say what kind of prompts. You know, is it verbal? Is it gestural? Is it physical? Needs prompting for medication. Reminders to go to bed and get up. Needs support to monitor his eating. And I'm cheating because I'm just reading your description. I printed it out.
Good job, Ellen.
I don't remember this. Yeah, I don't.
Didn't he needed someone to even though he liked cooking, right? Didn't he need someone to kind of watch his cooking?
It says monitor his eating and ensure he has regular meal times.
And it does indicate that he needs some level of support when cooking.
All right. Any other daily living pieces that we want to know? Claire, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I had a question. So when you're reading the record, and maybe like, you're reading the record and you're looking at the SIS, and if there's discrepancies in like the level of assistance somebody needs, is this where you would note that?
Yeah, I think this would be an appropriate place to note that. To say, says he needs a lot more support, and especially sometimes in the record, although I will say, I think Colleen already said this, like I didn't often find consistencies in the record reviews that I've gone to, and that's reviewing like, hundreds and hundreds of records. But I'm sure that you will, there will be some things. Generally, the records themselves might have like a pretty good long description. So I would include like that justification in there. So, this, if it said here, like he needs prompting with prompting to make sure he follows his, I forget what this is, his regular meal times. So maybe it says that, but then maybe in the record it says that he refuses to eat, and that he really he needs like even like maybe behavioral support or something to make sure that he's getting like nutrition. those would be things you would want to pull in. You would want to say that in the record it says, that what his support looks like, and all of that justification here. So again, kind of taking the totality and looking at the kind of holistic needs of the person.
And we'll have a process for in-person, if any discrepancies are found, what to look at for what we're going to actually put down as the answer. I don't think we need to go into that in too much depth, since like Jamie and I have said, I think it's going to be pretty rare, but we'll work that out together if those inconsistencies exist. So noting it here would be great.
I actually missed it. It doesn't say that it needs assistance with cooking, but I don't quite know what it says. Sam needs guidance.
Guidance. Me too.
What guidance actually means. It's guidance around meal planning, shopping, preparing food, and cleaning up.
Yeah.
So I think that falls under this category. And I don't know if you put support around managing his finances in here too.
I did not.
Appointments and transportation.
If that goes somewhere. Yeah, my husband would say that I need guidance.
I will note, we don't know much more, and I would be wanting to look further into this record to find out, but it does say that sometimes he may need some modeling on how to complete certain hygiene tasks. So that, is a little more than just prompting.
Yeah. Yep. All right, let's move on to community living. So this would include things like participating in recreation, accessing services in the community, shopping or visiting with others. We do know already that he does need some guidance with shopping, right? We just wrote that one in the last one. What else do we know about Sam?
He needs support with transportation to access his community.
And I guess based on some of his goals. I'm not sure if he's able to independently engage in like social activities. You know, he has a goal to be married and wants to get his driver's license. I'm not sure how independent with those types of goals and those activities Sam is based on the information we have.
Yeah. This here too. Oh, goodness, what happened? More importantly, how do I undo that? There we go. Ah, all right, never mind. I'm not trying that. Okay, so we know that he wants to get his license, so he might need support to do that. And you also mentioned wants to get married, so.
And even like the first stages of wanting to engage in any relationship. So I'm not sure socially, yeah, what type of support would be needed.
I'm gonna leave it at that for now. Let's see. Anything else in community that we can think of?
I would just say that he has goals around becoming a veterinary assistant and woodworking, and those will probably occur in the community. So just understanding the support he needs there.
All right. Okay, any other community living things? All right, we're going to move on to health and safety. So this is taking medications, maintaining a nutritious diet, physical health and well-being. We do know that he needs some guidance with meal planning. So that would speak to me to him having maybe needing some support to, I don't know, maybe choose healthy things. He's 22. And we also know that he needs prompting for medication. What else?
Needs support in scheduling appointments and getting to them.
I guess I would be curious too if like in those appointments, how much support he would need, because it just doesn't really indicate that, but it does note that due to some of the communication pieces and his ability to regulate his emotions at times, that there's a possibility that attending appointments on his own may be an area of support that's needed.
Yeah, and it also said that he sometimes would say he understood something and he didn't. So like maybe follow up for medical care he might need some support with.
So I have a question. Right now, we're sort of guessing based on the information we have. And my inclination would be to try to find in the record whether or not he needs it. Are you suggesting we might put things down, may need follow-up, or should we just base it on what we find?
I would put what you find in the record, but if you have a strong inclination that he might need support, then I would definitely clarify that by saying may or might based on this thing. So if we wanted to be even more careful here, we could say or follow up medical care due to I trying to think of the way to say this, but due to not.
You
But
could
we
even
have-
say due to stated communication issues to show you're basing that on.
Yep. I do think you're probably going to find more direct, useful information in the records, though. So I would definitely try to pull in as much explicit language as you can. And that, I don't know how your records are, but like if you did do them on a computer, it might be possible that you can kind of copy and paste in some sections as well.
Would
It
you
did s-
include medical diagnoses in this section?
I mean, you can if there are things like that they are needing medical or health supports for, like if a person has cancer and they need routine cancer care, I would definitely include things like that. You can also maybe put things, here, if there was any sort of special considerations that related to a medical diagnosis that you wanted to include.
Thank you.
And there is a medical section as well that will be after the general needs for those issues.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Thank you. Right here.
Mm-hmm.
Forgot about that one. There you go. All right. So we're going to move on to learning. This includes problem solving strategies, academic, self-management strategies, using technology for learning. What do we know about Sam? This is an area where I would say our scenario was a little sparse. But we do know that he wants to go to school, right? Or he is in school. I can't remember exactly the way that's worded.
I think it said he wants to go to school to become a veterinary assistant. But again, we could not fit the whole file in here, but you will be able to find those sorts of things in the file.
Yeah, and also in the SIS assessment, there is a section on learning, so.
Would you put the communication needs under learning, or do you put is there a separate section for communication?
I would maybe put some here. Sorry. I don't know if that was just feedback or someone was trying to say something. I would maybe put some of them here and some under social. If it impacts the learning, then definitely here as well.
I mean, it doesn't tell us, we don't know, but he does have verbal, oral motor dyspraxia and central auditory processing disorder. So I think understanding a little bit about those pieces, I think there's probably some support that's needed around that, but we just don't know from the.
What was the other one? I forgot what, I didn't catch it.
Central auditory processing disorder.
So, I mean, it's possible that he may need supports if he were enrolled in like a college or something, that he might qualify for some of those like note taking or things like that, supports in his school.
So under this category, it says self-management strategies. And they note that he's seeing a therapist, he needs help managing, regulating his emotions. I would be inclined to put that under behavioral, but want to clarify that with you. What belongs here versus the behavioral section?
I think, and Colleen, please chime in if you disagree, but if it were me, I would just put it everywhere I thought that it was relevant.
That was what I was going to say, because a lot of these things are going to affect different parts of life. So I would probably put it in both.
In both, thank you.
And I missed the last part. He's seeing a therapist for managing
and regulating emotions.
Regulating.
And expressing himself.
Awesome. All right, anything else we want to include in learning? All right, we know for work that he wants to become a veterinary tech. I don't believe he's employed now, is that right? Or a veterinary assistant?
It does not indicate that he is currently.
So are there any other pieces we would want to include here related to work?
Jamie, I would want to encourage everybody to, yes, that's an important thing to note, but then think about the supports needed to get there too.
And I think the description that he requires modeling and prompts to complete tasks, even within the home, may apply to other situations too.
Yep. That's exactly what I was going to say. I think we could infer in some fashion that he may need some supports and guidance along that process.
And take into account his processing time. So when he's learning new
Yeah.
skills and yeah.
And the communication issues would definitely weigh in. I mean, he would need, I imagine, prompting or guidance around getting to work on time, following a routine, you know, the other characteristics we saw in the home section.
And also we know he needs support for transportation.
Or support for getting that driver's license he wants.
Oh, they're even better. Yeah. All right, so we're going to move on to social. We did kind of already say earlier that he may need support with social activities. He might need support to achieve his goal of getting married, finding a partner. There are definitely some pieces in here, I think, even in the little snippet that are relevant. Anyone want to tell me something to type here?
I'd probably cut and paste the communication issues.
Yeah, that pasting is not working.
Oh.
I just tried it a minute ago and it was like, messed up my whole form. So I'm just going to go with his communication issues.
I think maybe if we could say communication style.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else we want to add here?
I don't know if we want to specifically call out the woodworking again. I know we have it in another place, but it's definitely probably a good social outlet for him.
Is it wrong for me to assume that if time and schedules permit, it'd be good to do this with a couple of members of the team? What's the state's guidance on that?
I mean, Jody and Colleen, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we're happy to have, you know, multiple people give their input to help the review. But, you know, Colleen and Jody, I know that we kind of talked about this in the beginning, so I don't know if you want to kind of restate anything.
Yeah, I think that having multiple people give input would be just fine. Sometimes people catch things in the records that other people may not. So even just looking at the records alone, having more than one person would be great.
And I think those discussions too, in that people see different things, is part of this process. It's, trying to ensure that folks are getting what they need. So the more input and voices, the better.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree. Even just through this exercise, all of the things that we're coming to with a little snippet of information we have. All right. In the interest of time, I'm going to move us along to advocacy. Is there anything that we want to add here? Maybe some more about his communication style.
He needs time to process conversations and space to be able to ask questions or express himself. And I think it's important just to note that sometimes he may say that he understands something that he doesn't. And then it notes if he feels like he's misunderstood, he may shut down and become frustrated.
He needs help managing his finances, so probably a good idea to make sure he doesn't get taken advantage of. Would he notice if some, $10 went missing from his wallet?
Oh, I was going to note that he seems pretty clear about making decisions about what he wants, and that's definitely a strength.
Yeah, thank you for pointing out strength. All right, again, just for time, I'm going to move us along because we do have one more we're going to talk through after this one. So now we're going to jump into behavior support needs. Are there any behavior support needs that we need to note here for Sam? These might be things, I mean, this is a pretty broad category, but some examples here might include that support that maybe he would need to prevent assault or self-injury or something along those lines.
Well, we talked a few minutes ago about needing help managing and regulating emotions. And I would be inclined to put it here unless that's not what this category is for.
Yeah, I think that actually works here. Unfortunately, I can't type in this for some reason, so.
Oh.
So we're just going to talk through this one, and you all have watched me type enough anyway. So, oh, it's white. That's what it is. Look at that.
And he meets with a therapist bi-weekly for support around emotional regulation.
Goodness.
Jamie, give it up. We'll talk through it.
I actually do like talking or typing. It keeps me.
Oh, okay.
It keeps my mind. I shouldn't say fresh, but so you may need support for social and emotional regulation. And I forgot what the other one you said was. He shuts down. Did somebody say that?
I think so. It sounds like he does require the support around communication, because it sounds like if he's not able to express himself, that he becomes frustrated and will shut down. And so what that looks like, we're not exactly sure. Because he takes medication, likely too, he does have a mental health diagnosis. It doesn't indicate what that is, but that might be what's contributing to some of the emotional regulation.
Yeah. I'm not going to put that here because I do think you would know. I would hope beyond hope that you would know that by looking in the record for a real person. But yeah, that could be true for sure.
I think someone had mentioned the biweekly therapy, because that is a support need he has.
And if you experience these issues when you're trying to fill it in, all I did was make it black. All right. Anything else we want to add here? We're going to move on to medical support needs so we can get through our last example. And I bet I'm going to have to fix this really quickly. What do we want to add for medical? If anything.
We know he needs support around making appointments.
And transportation to the appointments.
Taking his medications.
I keep writing support, but I would encourage you also to be really specific. Like if it says prompting, write prompting, you know, when you're actually filling them out. If it says hand over hand or physical, or, you know, there's a device or something that's used to support the person, make sure you note those.
Yeah. Well, and that's all it says here. His mom supports him in making appointments, so we can't really get more precise.
All right. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next one. And the next one is just any services that you think that he might need. And this is our last question. So after this, we're going to move on to our final and last practice piece. And we'll just talk through that one instead of going through all this. But I do hope that you'll have a good sense of how to fill these out after this. So any services that you think would be helpful for him to have? There's some that he's already getting. That's one consideration. That doesn't mean that we need to just say, oh, because he's already getting this, he should continue to get it, and you'll have the full record. So you'll be able to see, you know, what services the person's getting and all of those things. So this one is kind of more of a, you know, using rationale and judgment, looking at this person's support needs, the goals that they've identified. I will say that definitely when we've done this before, we do see that maybe sometimes the services somebody's getting up is not lining up with what they need. Maybe somebody has really intensive, you know, behavioral needs, but have no behavioral supports or anything like that. And we see a lot of that. So this is not based on what's in there. This is your rationale, your expertise that we're asking for here. And really just to kind of be thinking about it so that when we get to the kind of confirmation piece and attaching, you know, the services to the, or not that we're attaching services to the support levels, but when we're thinking about services and service costs, that we're also thinking about what a person might need based on their support needs.
Jamie, I just want to make sure I heard that, that I interpreted that correctly. So it's very possible that we could list the services we think that they would need, and they would match right up to the services that they are already getting. Okay, and it would be doubled essentially, and that's okay. But we could also identify things they weren't getting
that they could be using or would benefit from. So if he's, you know, he wants to be employed and he's not getting an employment service, maybe that's something you're like, wow, he should be getting that, you know, pre-vocation. I don't know what I'm not familiar with the service names, but you know, whatever that service is that helps connect him to a job, or has he been connected to VR, or, you know, and this is really about the services offered through the department, not necessarily other pieces. So I don't know why I said VR.
Claire has a hand up.
Yeah, that was you just kind of answered my question, which was, okay. Are we limiting the list to the services that are available through home and community-based services, or are we talking about other things that are outside that?
Yeah. Are you going to fund them yourself, Claire?
No, but what, you know, when somebody has a plan, that we're also listing other services outside our field that we're coordinating.
Yeah.
I think you should put what you think they should be receiving here.
Well,
Jamie,
yeah, and
Colleen.
well, I would say be very clear about the services that are offered by the department. So if you do, because sometimes that would be a consideration, like, does he need employment services? He's 22. You might have seen in the record that he's already been connected to VR and is getting, support to help find a job and to start college, and so maybe that isn't a service that he needs through the division. And you want to note that so it's like clear that, you're not looking past his employment desires, but that he's receiving that service elsewhere. I would just be really clear in which ones are services offered through the department and not from other entities.
I guess the other piece then is just like, since you're using employment as an example, we have a system of care that has funding priorities. And so like when we're thinking about services, although this may be an individual who does have the desire to work or pursue, let's say, post-secondary education, if that wasn't something that rose to a certain level of need, I guess that, so should we not be thinking that way at all? So somebody might be able to say, I am accessing voc rehab or higher ability, but higher ability doesn't have the capacity to meet somebody with my support needs to really find gainful employment. But so it's not somebody who's necessarily currently employed, but has the desire to be employed. Are we not thinking about our current system? I guess that's probably a question for you, Jessica.
Yeah, I don't know how you've handled it in other states to the HSRI team. I mean, I would be inclined to say we should put the services that the person might benefit from, even if it's something that is a little complicated the way our system of care is laid out. So let's say he was, 32 and hadn't worked previously and now had some job goals and it wasn't part of his funding. And I think that would still be something that we could maybe make a note about. Doesn't have current funding, but would potentially be something that he wanted to explore. So maybe just kind of call it out if it's not really clear that either we could provide it or that it seems like they have it, or if it just might be one of those unique situations that it could be in one other area besides DS.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say services that this person would benefit from. Remembering that, your answers here are not going to turn around and translate into exactly how, this all gets matched later on to services or anything like that, but that it would help to be considering, like a lot of people have employment goals. So maybe that is something that we need to, kind of build into there, even if it's, something that is maybe hard to get today. And I apologize if I'm maybe not addressing it correctly. I did get a little bit confused on the question, but I agree that we should list the ones that we think would benefit the person, regardless of the realities of the current service system. Sorry.
So where did respite fall under here? Would this be under this section that we're on now? Because I don't recall it getting mentioned in the other sections.
Yeah, you can add it here. So do you want to say respite? Because that seemed like that was helping his family.
Yep.
Okay. And you could, if you wanted to, you could be as specific as you want here. Like, could use respite for this amount of time or whatever. We won't do that now because we do need to move along. So we have respite. What other services?
It says community, service coordination, employment, and clinical therapies.
And those are all things that you think he does still need.
And home supports. I guess respite would be considered the home support, maybe.
Are there other in-home supports that you think he would benefit? Other service And
Well, it sounds like if there were goals, some of the support, although he can be left home alone, it's still unclear as to how independent he is with a lot of those activities. It sounds like the parents currently are meeting that need that they provide. It does indicate that they provide a lot of support, hence the need for the respite.
So are we saying we think respite is the in-home support that he needs and that he does not need other supports?
I mean, that's not clear to me, to be home if his parents work and they're gone all day and he needs as much support as he does during the daytime to prompt activities, manage how much he's eating, support around cooking. I would think that somebody has to provide, like there has to actually be a physical person at periodic parts of the day to do those things with Sam. But if his parents don't work and they're able to provide that, it just doesn't tell us that. It says they provide it just indicates that they provide a lot of support.
What is the name of the service? I mean, is it called in-home supports or is it called something else?
It's called in-home.
Okay. Okay, let's put it back in then.
I think
what's
there's a
the-
potential.
Sorry, go ahead. It's a little there's a little bit of a conflict here. Just the write-up, he can be alone for up to 8 hours, needs someone available at night and in the morning for his routine. So I'd be reading this and thinking he seems to be able to get by during the day for 8 hours on his own. So I think it's just something I'd look more into the record, because where does the help come in for lunchtime? When does he take his meds? So it feels like there's some conflicting or missing information in the write-up.
Or if his parents provide lunch for, like I make my lunches for the whole week, and then otherwise I would probably need a lot more support making mealtime. So, maybe there's strategies that they're using to get around that. These are all really good considerations, and these would be things, again, that you could discuss. It seems like some of you might be doing this with a smaller team when you're filling out your pre-review form, so you can kind of discuss some of these issues and come to a good determination on what you think. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing there. We're going to hop over to the other scenario, and we'll read through it, and we'll just talk really generally about it because we are running out of time. We did speed through everything really early on, but now we're we're really diving in and we're spending some time on things. So
just to note though, in that other example, based on the communication needs, likely we would potentially request communication supports. That's different than clinical services. So just as like a side.
Hey, Jamie.
Yeah.
You said that hesitantly. Yeah. One, I wanted to introduce Jasmine since she popped in and we have another hour. So Jasmine, would you mind just introducing yourself? Yeah.
I, for whatever reason, thought we had just 2 hours. So good. We've got lots of time.
Hi everyone. I'm so sorry I'm late. I did have a conflict. My name is Jasmine Hepburn, and I will be one of the group leaders, and I look forward to meeting you all very soon in Vermont. If you are with group 3, you will be with me. So thank you very much.
Awesome. And I also wanted to offer, do you guys want to take a 5-minute break to use the restroom, grab a water, coffee, whatever? Putting that out there if you want to before we go on to the next scenario.
I'm in full agreement if we're for 3 hours that we take. I mean, I think even 5 minutes, if people need 10, shake your heads vigorously and we'll go 10 instead.
Yes, please. I agree, Jennifer. We should all get up and stretch. I feel like we could do a 10-minute break if everybody's good with that and come back couple of minutes before 3 and go through our next group. Okay. Great. We will see you guys then.
See you soon.
Hopefully people are popping back in here, so we'll give it a couple minutes in case anybody had to make some coffee or anything like that. And then Jamie will walk us through another example and questions.
Yep. Sorry, I'm shoving food in my face. And wishing I had coffee now that you mentioned it. So that will be something for later. While people are getting back on, I'm going to go ahead and get my screen up again. We will walk through the next example shortly. Before we do, if people have questions from the last one, we can go ahead and address those. All right, here we go. All right, so we are going to walk through our next example. And before we get off, I will copy and paste it into the chat again. So you all will have it handy whenever we start looking at the form again. I think we won't spend time actually typing in the form. I think we'll just kind of talk it through this time. You all have probably seen enough of my typing and, you know, mistakes and corrections to last a lifetime. So I think we'll just skip that this round. For this example, we are going to talk about Mai. So Mai is a 32-year-old Southeast Asian woman who's receiving waiver services. She has been living in the United States for almost 10 years. She likes to indulge in many self-care activities, a woman after my own heart. She enjoys being out in nature and taking walks, and being around her community is her favorite pastime. She also enjoys cooking and eating food from her home country. She really values family time. She enjoys being around her family as much as she possibly can. She lives in a single family home that is supported by staff. She's currently involved in a work experience where she helps make juices for a local cafe. Sometimes she requires 2-to-1 staffing for her employment. And she requires some modeling to complete the tasks that she has at work. She uses an interpreter service via telephone for necessary communication needs for appointments. Without an interpreter, she would not be able to access her community, doctors, or communicate with her staff. She does understand some English when she's listening, but her spoken English skills are pretty limited. She has physical disabilities, and she's experienced many traumas throughout her life, including a traumatic brain injury that she suffered as a child. She has a long history of physical and destructive behavior, which has resulted in extended hospitalization stay for 7 months at one point. She has a pretty significant PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, a seizure disorder. She experiences hallucinations, and these have sometimes resulted in her becoming physically violent. During the time of the assessment, she had not had any major assaults in nearly 2 years. She can be left alone in her bedroom, but does need to be periodically checked on, and she cannot be unsupervised for an extended period of time. She has limited use of her right arm and hand. She requires physical assistance with self-care tasks such as washing her hair, reaching her back to properly wash, and putting on certain clothing items. She has congenital, I don't know how to pronounce this, I'm sorry, Talipes equinovirus deformity of both of her feet, and she's unable to wash them in the shower. She also refuses assistance with showering, and she has a history of refusing to take her medication. So that is we are, again, I'm going to switch to the form, though won't be filling it in. Let me paste these details in the chat so that you can refer to them as we go. For those of you who did not print them out, let me go ahead and stop sharing this one, and we'll switch over to the other form. It will take me just a second to do that. All right, let's go ahead and share this one. All right, I'm going to make it bigger just a little bit. We can just talk through this. So her name was Mai. Again, make sure you put in your reviewer name. Her name was Mai. She'll have an ID that will come with her. I did forget her age, so if somebody has it.
32.
32. And what type of living setting is she in?
It sounded like staffed living.
Staffed living, great. And again, we talked about this last time. You should be able to confirm by looking at your own, by looking at the form where the records were indicated on. And then a summary of her strengths and goals. What are some of her strengths and goals?
Strong connection to family.
She indulges in self-care activities. That's a strength.
Absolutely. Sounds like she has a job.
It does sound like that. And she enjoys cooking. And being in nature.
Wonderful. Did it list any of her goals? I don't remember this one listing any specific goals quite in the way the last one did.
No, I don't see any.
So let's think about any sort of special considerations that we would want to note for Mai.
She needs extensive and
Go ahead, Ellen.
I was just going to say extensive interpreter services, and I'm not sure if that belongs here, but
yeah, and an interpretation can be hard to line up, so good thing to fill out, I think.
Looks like she has some extensive mental health support needs in addition to some of her physical and medical support needs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are definitely things I would want to note here. Anything else that we think is important, a special consideration we want to note for her?
That at times 2-to-1 staffing is necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that one seems like a good one to note too. And, you know, if you had the records, hopefully it would be really explicit as to why, you know, is it because she needs physical support during the job and, you know, needs like, I'm not sure, you know, and that requires 2-to-1 staffing, or Is it to help, manage her behavioral supports or, so that would be something I would be really interested in. That would be something I would definitely want to follow up with in the record. If you saw that in one place to really understand why.
I don't know if this would be listed there, but something around like cultural sensitivity. It says, she's been in the United States for 10 years, but her culture is really important to her. And so I don't know if that would fit exactly in there, but
yeah,
someone who has strong cultural competency.
And if you're thinking about her support needs, it might be, to the extent possible to connect her to people from her culture or who speak her language, preferably. Although that's probably difficult, and thus the need for the interpretation services. All right, we will continue moving along. So we're going to go to the general support needs. Now we want to be thinking about daily living. What sorts of supports did we see that she needs for daily living?
There's a need for physical assistance with bathing, but it also states that she refuses the assistance with showering.
And I don't think it mentioned anything about like her moving around her home, but she does have some physical issues that seem to some extent impact her mobility.
Yeah, it doesn't indicate that beyond the dressing, that she does need some support due to physical limitations with dressing. But because of her diagnoses, I'm sure there'd be other parts in the record that would indicate whether or not it does sound like mobility must be impacted on some level.
Yeah, and if she had like any sort of, equipment or anything, those would be things again that we would want to list here.
Yeah, and I think just the statement that she has limited use of her right arm and hand indicates there's some support needs there.
Right. Or, maybe she's using an adaptive spoon or, has those machines that I forget what they're called, but that actually do some feeding, support, and they're can help do some things like that. So definitely things we want to be looking for in the record. Any other that really jump out to you here?
I think that this would be a category where we're going to see, after you looked in the record, that she probably requires support with most activities of daily living on some level, whether it's monitoring to make sure that she's being safe, or helping her stay regulated so that her activities can actually get accomplished.
Right. And even in what was shared here, it said that she could only be left alone for short periods in her room, but that she needed a lot of supervision. So I think you're probably right. And this would be one where we would hope to have a lot more information in the record. We're going to move to community living. Is there anything that just kind of jumped out to people when we were talking through some of her support needs related to community living? Again, this is participating in recreation, accessing services in the community, shopping, visiting others.
I think that access to being able to communicate, so the interpreter or having support.
Yeah.
That she's able to actively participate in her community.
And it said she had limited spoken English, so that could be a really big support for her.
And probably very, very needed, because it does talk about that this is really important to her, community and being outside.
And just given her physical abilities, she'll probably need physical assistance even in participating in community activities. And it sounds like she probably has either eyes on or arm's length supervision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she needs a lot of oversight, and she does sometimes get physically aggressive to others. So we would want to know if that was something that happened in the community and if she needed, maybe extra supports when she was out in the community. Also because of her language, it's possible that maybe you would want to do some really targeted community inclusion, really looking at like, are there restaurants that are from her culture, or groups of people who are maybe a church or something, and making sure that there's ways to help her participate.
I'd be curious too, if we looked in the record, if there's a better understanding of her not living with her family, because it does sound like it was a very tight-knit family structure, and she does enjoy spending time with them. But based on her trauma history, there's a likelihood too that she potentially may not be able to be alone with her family because of that trauma history.
Yeah. And again, all things I would hope that we would have a much clearer picture of from looking in the record, and we could provide some like, really specific statements here that come from things that we've learned about her history and all of that.
And if she requires 2-to-1 at work, I would wonder if that would carry over to other community activities.
Right. So possible that she needs quite a bit of support in the community. Maybe there's limitations in, who she's able to spend time with. If there is some, trauma in the family. So we're definitely, it seems like we're kind of agreeing that she likely has a high need for support in the community. So we'll move on to health and safety activities. Anything that jumps out to you here that we should chat through?
Medication refusal.
Yeah, definitely. And we don't know what medication she's on, but they could be, things that she really needs. And so, kind of working through how to address that. I thought somebody else was going to chime in and say something.
I was going to say the exact same thing, support around taking meds.
Yeah. For her, this would be another thing where I would be wanting to, again, look to the records and to understand like what safety means for her. If she has any sort of like involvement, it doesn't mention this here, but, with the criminal legal system for some of the, behaviors that she has had in the past, I would be wanting to like kind of understand that. Or, if there are maybe, people or situations really that are better for her to abstain from being in, to again protect her and other people in the community. If they were things that maybe seem to kind of elevate her, engaging some of those like risky behaviors.
And it does say she has a seizure disorder and hallucinations, so she probably is involved with a psychiatrist if that falls under this category for well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely something you'd want to note here. And I think somebody earlier mentioned, possibly a mental health diagnosis, because of some of those details. So probably want to note that here too. All right, we're going to move on to learning. Anything here that we want to mention?
I think taking into account, oh, sorry, Ellen. I was just going to say, taking into account the language barriers, you know, making sure that whatever she's trying to learn is in her language or interpreted for her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of too. It says that she uses a phone or phone support for interpretation. So just better understanding that and how accessible it is.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, it's using technology. If you learn that there was some other technologies she was using, like, you know, one of the apps on the phone or something when she doesn't have the phone support available, maybe.
And I'd be curious to learn if the traumatic brain injury had any effect on learning or cognition.
Right. Or memory or yeah, some of those pieces. All right. Looking at this, I really wish we knew more about her work. And I feel like, you know, you'll probably run into records where you're like, gosh, I just like really wish I knew more about this. But is there anything that really jumps out to you about her work or, you know, what it might be like? And again, we're inferring a lot here that we would hope in the real world where you'll be doing this, that you'll have access to information about these.
So for work, it does say she sometimes needs the 2-to-1 supports. She does have a job.
Requires modeling for some tasks.
Great. So again, getting really specific about the types of support she needs.
And again, the language issue, you know, she has to be able to communicate with her staff and her employer and how that's supported.
Yeah. And if you imagine that there's a lot of interaction in the work, like, is that something where she's using the phone interpretation service for the whole time she's at the job? Or, yeah, so definitely some things to be thinking
that
about.
would be hard.
That would be hard.
Making juice and being on the phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
She has one hand she can use.
Yeah. All right, let's move to social. So again, social skills, socializing outside of the home, friendships, intimate relationships, and communicating. And I think we mentioned some things already that we might want to consider here, right? Like if, you know, there are maybe some, you know, if that her trauma stems from her family, I think somebody mentioned, and maybe there's some like limitations in her being around certain people or something. Maybe that's something we would need to consider here. Again, assuming that the record would have more information. Anything else that we can think of?
Yeah, and I think like more broadly around trauma, it may not be anything that's even connected to necessarily the family. Like we're not sure what her childhood situation was, and it might just even be something in the environment that she grew up in and being a person with a developmental disability. So like understanding what some of the triggers might be around that trauma. So in social situations, trying to better understand that so that she's well supported to have successful interactions with other individuals.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And she's only been in the US for 10 years. I mean, it's quite possible that she was adopted or something after whatever, you know, occurred in her life. So definitely looking at how we can support her to have relationships with people that she's interested in having those relationships with. All right, we'll move on to advocacy. Anything there that really stands out to you?
I think the language thing will play a major role to make sure she can make informed decisions. She, if she has to obtain legal services or even, I think that plays a major role in helping her become a more independent, autonomous person.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And she has limited English herself. So having access to that to help her advocate for herself as well.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody mentioned the finances for the last person, and that would be something I would be interested in learning about for her. She does have a job, is she managing her funds independently? Does she need support for that? Things like that.
And I'd want to learn more around this, but with medication refusal and refusing assistance in the shower, um, really, how is she making those decisions and doing what's best for herself?
Right. All right. Anything else? Okay, let's move on to behavior support needs. So we are now thinking about what she might need. And we do know that she does have some behavioral support needs. So what would we want to note here?
I mean, her PTSD is referred to as severe. I think that's pretty notable.
I think, the whole clinical piece, the trauma-informed support, the psychiatric support, clinical support around her behavioral issues, which seem to have really, she's really seemed to have been regulating herself the last couple of years because she has a history of hospitalization.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So it says that it's been 2 years, I think, since she has, it was since she had an assault. Is that what it was?
Yep.
Yeah. And before, at some point, she was hospitalized for 7 months. So maybe there is something going on right now that we can really learn from, where she's in a good place and the supports that are being provided are helping to keep her from maybe being hospitalized or getting into any sort of legal trouble. Or more importantly, hurting anyone else or herself. All right, anything else we want to add? We have that she has some significant post-traumatic stress disorder. We're thinking about the fact that she might be in a good spot right now, and maybe there's some supports in place that are really helping with that. I think we've talked about a bunch of things here. This would be where I would really want to, in the behavior support needs place, anything that you saw on the record that related to behavior, and I know we've talked about them in other areas, I would definitely want to be putting them here. So again, if I went back to the employment, and I know that she's getting 2-to-1 supported employment, and much of that is is behavioral support, that I would want to note that here. I would be like, in her job, this is the types of supports that people provide. Or yeah, I didn't write it down. I was going to try to go up and look at my notes, but if some of the other things we said about her being in the community and the types of support she might need there, and if I saw that in the record, I would definitely know all of that here, even if it's in other places, because that is one thing we definitely know about medical and behavioral needs, is that they impact a lot of a person's life, not just it's not like isolated things that impacts, you know, their daily living, their communication, their social, you know, opportunities, lots of things like that. And so I would definitely make sure to pull all of that down here. All right, so last one, well, one more after this, but our last one about support needs. Is there anything that we would really want to know about her medical support needs? I think a couple people already mentioned the medication refusal. And especially if she's
seizure disorder.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And hallucinations, perhaps she's taking medications for that. Like those are things we would definitely want to know what would happen if she refuses her medication.
Right. And the issue with her right arm that we could not pronounce.
Yeah.
The deformity of her, oh, it was of her feet as
Yeah.
well. And the TBI, again, falls in the medical.
Yeah. Yeah, and it said when she was a child, right? I was wondering if there would still be, if it was recent and there were still like ongoing, you know, rehabilitation things that she was still involved in ongoing rehabilitation. That would be something I would want to note here. All right. So we've got a few things here. We're going to just scroll down to the services and we're going to talk for a minute about the types of services that you think that she would need. So far, I think we decided that she had staffed housing. She gets 2-to-1 support for employment. So we do know that she's getting those couple of services in the records. I'm sure you'll be able to see all of the services that she gets. But let's just talk for a minute about some of the services that you think that she might benefit from.
I mean, definitely staff living makes sense for her. And the employment, I don't know if, you know, I would also add community supports. Sometimes it's rolled into staff living. Service coordination, sort of a given, and the clinical.
And by clinical, you mean therapy? Like some sort of therapy or nursing?
So for clinical, I mean, we can include nursing, we can include med management, psychiatric services.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, so I wonder if in addition to that, there are other types of therapies that we call supportive services that don't necessarily fall under that clinical category, but provide support with things like regulation, with other types of therapies.
Yeah.
That's a good point to use our service categories. Yeah.
I think those all seem like good suggestions for her.
And it would be interesting just looking through the record, although she hasn't had any assaultive behavior in 2 years, have crisis services been needed? How often did she access crisis services to prevent hospitalization?
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and one other thing, if she was out of services or hospitalized, I would note that for sure in the behavioral section too. So I don't think it was clear how long ago that happened, but I would definitely note that here under behavior support needs too. But yeah, did she make use of crisis services? I completely agree. Good one. All right. Well, that wraps up this example. I think I will pause and see if anyone has questions about the pre-review, and then we'll really quickly take a peek at the form that you all will be filling out in person together, where you'll be bringing those pre-review forms to kind of like look at that. And so if you have questions about the pre-review forms, how you fill them out, anything like that, now is the time.
And I know we could not give a record for us all to review because it would take forever, but hopefully that the examples kind of oh, sorry. Yes. And Colleen, we need to keep reminding, please bring a printed or handwritten copy of each of the pre-reviews. So you're going to come with 10 of those in hand for your in-person review. But hopefully the examples gave you a little sense of how to navigate and look through the records to try to take notes on some of these things.
If there is something that comes up between now and our meeting down in Waterbury, should we be reaching out to you, or should we be reaching out to Jessica?
Jessica, I'll let you kind of field that. I think we're all happy to answer questions, but Jessica, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd take a no wrong door approach. So if you wanted to start with, you're just more comfortable because you know me, you've got my email address on hand, feel free to shoot it to me and I can pull in the other folks. Or since in the big packet, you have your team leaders' contact information, you can send it just to them or you can send it to me and them. But I think no matter what, we will get you to the right person to get you the answer.
Thank you.
All right, I am going to, please chime in if you have any additional questions. I'm going to share the form that we're using on site just so you get a chance to peek at it.
And I'm gonna clarify very briefly, Jamie, that you won't be, the group will be filling out this form in the sense of you're going to go through and talk and have a discussion to agree on the answers here. So it's not like we're going to hand you the form and you're going to have to run off and fill it out. This is a group.
Well, actually, I don't think we're even asking people to, right, Jody, to fill this in at all. This is
correct.
This is the questions you're going to be answering, but your group lead is actually going to be filling it in on an Excel spreadsheet.
Correct.
And the reason for that is so that we can kind of lock down all of the items and make sure all of the information's there, and that we don't get back home and we're like, oh no, somebody didn't answer a question here. But yeah, this is what you'll have in front of you. This will be the questions you're walking through. You'll answer all of these. And we, the team leads, will actually be entering all of it into a spreadsheet that we will use later when we analyze all of these results. So again, this just starts with the background information. And, you know, if you have concerns about the living setting or how they're listed in there, you can bring those with you. Or sorry, you can hopefully resolve those prior to coming. Jessica, I see you have a question.
I just wanted to read a question in the chat from Bart. Do we not get a copy of these forms in advance? You did get a copy. So they are attached to the meeting invite, and you may not have been here when we were first talking about, I sent an email to folks who were on the meeting invite with the attachment. I also attached it to the meeting invite. So if you are someone who was forwarded this invite, you'll either need to ask whoever forwarded you the invite if they can send the attachments, or email me, jessica.bernard@vermont.gov, and I can send them to you as well. But if you are on this meeting right now and you know your coworker doesn't have access to the invite for some reason because you forwarded it, please help them out. Please send the forms. And I also, just for folks who multitask during long meetings, it's okay. But I just want to be really clear. The pre-review form that we just spent a lot of time looking at is what you need to fill out ahead of time. This background information form, you do not fill this out. You're not doing double duty. And I know we're going to get questions about this. So even though you all did a great job of kind of going over, I just want to say it once more, really loud, really clearly. The background information that we're about to go over, this form is for our in-person meeting that will be handled by our facilitators. So you do not have to fill out a second form. So I hope everyone, if you're multitasking, I hope you heard that.
Yeah.
And just to clarify that it's not in what you sent out. the pre-review form. That's what they have. I think Jamie and Colleen that will have, copies of this for folks to look at that day, but it's not coming to you beforehand.
Yeah. And you will just be filling out I think it's called pre-review. This one's called record review. And again, you're not filling it out at all, not in person, not before you come. You're not filling it out at all. You're using it to guide your discussion. I do want to point out here these support considerations. Those would be the things that you would have listed, right? In that one part that says support consideration. We have a few of them here, but we also ask for others. So I know in the last one, somebody brought up the need for interpretation. So, you would log that here, or you would note that in your pre-review form. And then when you came to the discussion, that would be when we ask for support considerations, you would say, oh yeah, I wrote that this person needed this type of support. So then, again, this is where your packet, and I do hope you get a chance to review that. I think that already went out. There was the information packet. If you can review it prior to coming, I think it will definitely help things move along a lot smoother. This is where that's going to be really, really helpful for you. So when we start looking at the support needs, these are the same categories. I bet they look really familiar because we just, went through all of them and we just put in notes for all of them. And then together with the group on site, using the guidance that is in that information packet about how to rate these, we're going to rate the person's support needs. So we're going to say this person has no support needs in this area. They have low support needs in this area. They have moderate support needs in this area, or they have high support needs in this area, or they have extensive support needs in this area. And there is some pretty, like I've said numerous times already, some pretty good guidance in that information packet that will help you to rate this. This will be a group decision. You are going to talk with all of the people who are involved in that, and Jody described earlier who that was going to be, maybe 1 to 2 providers, and I think 1 to 2 state staff, as well as your team lead from HSRI. That's going to be a conversation amongst that group to determine these, really following that guidance, looking at the notes that you all have brought about the person and making the best determination. And you'll do that for each of the categories. So that's why it's really important to have those printed out, thought through, so you're not relying on your memory of 10 different people and mixing people's needs up or anything, that you have it very clearly documented. And you can say, this person does have moderate needs because I see in the records and I noted this this thing right here, and that's why. So again, that will really, really help with that on-site discussion to have done that. So the next part is the behavior support needs, and these are categories that you can look at in the SIS assessment itself, and you can check them. I believe all of these are from the SIS assessment, and there's also an other. In the SIS assessment, people can write in other, so you could get that information from there, or it might be that the person has a medical need that is indicated in their records but isn't indicated in the SIS assessment, so that's where you can describe that need here. For the areas of support identified above, again, you're going to go through and you're going to say what type of support is needed. So does the person need no support? Do they need monitoring, prompting, partial physical assistance, full physical assistance? So when we talked about the kinds of supports that people needed, I said a few times that I would really be specific. I would say this person needs full physical assistance to complete this task. This person cannot, eat without full physical assistance. This person needs, prompting to make sure that they wash their armpits. Like those kinds of things, being as clear and specific as you can is going to help when you come to the on-site meeting. And then for the areas of support identified above, how frequently does the person require support? And I know that there's a lot here. There are a lot of different behavioral support needs. So you're kind of, again, thinking about like the totality of those behavior support needs and making a judgment related to behavior support across all of the types of behaviors that a person might have. So for this one, it's saying how frequently does this person require support, and you're making a determination as to whether it's less than monthly, weekly, daily, hourly. So if this person had some significant behavior support needs prior to coming to that meeting, I would hope that in the records there would be a behavior support plan. You would have, or whatever the equivalent is in Vermont, whatever you call it. Maybe a positive behavior support plan, they're sometimes called, and that you would have looked through that and you would have like looked at how often support is needed. And that last record that we kind of looked through together, I had a gazillion questions that weren't answered by that little snippet. And that's where I would be really doing some digging, looking in a positive behavior support plan if I could find it, and figuring out, okay, when was the last time that something happened? How much prompting is this person needing daily? How often is physical intervention needed? What does it look like? How many staff can provide it? And I would be trying to give really discrete details there. Then consider this individual's document behavior needs. To what extent does this person require support specific to these needs? Again, you'll find some guidance in that informational packet that describes how to answer this question, with the options being none, low, moderate, high, or extensive. And again, taking in totality the behavior support needs that this person has. Moving on to medical support needs. This, again, these are all items that are in the SIS assessment. There are also options to write in others, so you can go through and you can check which ones the person needs support in. And if there are things that are not mentioned in the SIS assessment but are in the records and they're not any one of these items, you can write that in others. So you have the opportunity to put anything in there that you found through reviewing the records and the SIS assessment itself. And then you're going through the same process where you're kind of taking all of those medical support needs in total, and you're putting a lot of thought into what type of support is needed to manage them, from none to full physical assistance. So again, when you're filling out that form, you're really going to try to find details. This person needs prompting with taking their medication. You know, this person needs full physical assistance with ostomy care. I know somebody brought up the issue of diabetes earlier, you know, like, is it just, you know, this person is, you know, taking medication and they're able to administer their own medication independently, or do they actually need full physical assistance to take medication? Do they need, you know, maybe even behavior support to make sure that they, you know, are making healthy choices because they're, you know, engaging in like some self-harm around those areas? You definitely want to be really descriptive in writing what types of supports people need. And I think Colleen said earlier, we're focused on the support, not necessarily the condition. We don't assume that, you know, any of these really mean that the person cannot be independent. Many people have, you know, these types of issues or these types of medical needs, and they really can be independent. We want to know what support the person is getting to make sure that they're well taking care of themselves well. Again, we're thinking about how frequently, less than monthly to hourly, and then we're considering to what extent do they require support specific to the totality of their medical support needs, from none to extensive. Referring to that information packet will help again with that. And then because you filled out the section where you thought about the services that the person needs, we're asking you to just kind of bring that information. We'll ask what service the person is currently receiving. If you think that they are receiving the correct amount of services, if you think that the current budget is enough to meet their particular needs, and what other services you think that they might benefit from. So in the question in the pre-review form, it just kind of asks, what services do you think the person might need? It might be helpful if you went ahead and said, here's what they're receiving, here's what they need. And then, you know, start to think through some of these questions too, like, are they getting the right amount of services? As you're going through that process of really looking at what's in the record and what you think they need, you'll probably come to some determinations about that as well. And this is a question for Jody or Colleen. Are we bringing service level information to the record review? I'm not actually sure.
Yes, I believe we are.
It's
Oh, sorry.
also it's also in the information packet. So the service,
Yeah,
I'm
for the
sorry, I was
individual.
thinking support levels, but yeah, I think Colleen,
Yeah.
you have that, and it'd be in the file as well, I assume.
Yeah, I was just thinking because our questions, that we want to make sure that you're coming prepared to answer that question. And that if you haven't really thought about this when you're filling out that service section, that you can actually look at it sounds like Colleen said that we are bringing the service level information, so you can actually look at it when you're on site with what you've already thought about and kind of make that determination. All right, so that takes us through the form.
Jamie,
yeah,
we have a sort of question statement in the chat. Since that, well, first part of it, Kara, that you will not be filling out the form. This is just the guide of the questions that you'll be talking about. But Kara said, I personally don't feel qualified to answer the medical questions off the cuff in a meeting. So I just wanted to acknowledge that concern in here. I think that, and Jamie, Colleen, jump in here as needed, but I think that as you review the file, you'll be able to see what types of supports around those medical conditions the person already is getting, to help guide the answer to that as well.
And the informational guide, we do try to be really specific in there and thinking through how to answer those. So that's why I would encourage you to look that over before you come to the on-site review training. And your role in filling out that pre-review form is to capture as much information as you can around those support needs. And I'm sorry, I heard somebody else chiming in.
That's me. I was just going to add also that we will be filling them out as a group. So it's not just on you. We're going to be working together to come to consensus about these. And if you look at the questions on the form, they are not extremely specific questions about this is exactly the number of hours or anything like that. We're looking for a little bit more general, does this person have low, moderate, very high needs in this area? And if there's ever uncertainty that you feel about answering those questions, we will talk them through as a group. We don't want you to come concerned or anxious about having to know every single detail about the people that we're reviewing.
And that really is the point of the group too, to bring your ideas, to talk them through and to make a good determination together. I probably didn't need to come to this slide, but Jody, since that's all that's really left, but Jody made this beautiful question slide and we're in questions, so I'm going to share it. So I see what will be the process if we don't agree on the level that is most appropriate. And I'm not sure, Colleen, or maybe even Jessica, if one of you want to respond to them.
I think that we are really seeking consensus. And to be clear, none of the questions are really asking you to come up with a specific level. We're just talking about like the amount of need in different areas. In all of the record reviews I've done, this has not happened, that we weren't able to reach consensus at some point. So I feel confident that we'll be able to do that.
And just a reminder, it's what you say is not going to affect the individual's record. And I know we said that earlier, but sometimes it can be confusing. Like you think if you rate the person low, that means that they're going to be assigned to a lower level. That's definitely not the case. We have already kind of done the work to look at where we think people land on this framework. So your decisions here are not going to impact any individual.
The only thing I was just going to add was that there are two camps of thought that are kind of really far apart. I'm guessing that by having the discussion, someone will be able to say, oh, maybe I missed something, and someone's filling in the gap as to why they think there's a discrepancy, or that's the point of the discussion, is that I think it'll become clear. And Colleen, I think you all kind of already addressed it. You've done this before, so you can see that there's a history of when people come together to discuss it, things become a little clearer, and folks usually are able to walk away from that review kind of in agreement most of the time, it sounds like.
And I think also, and I brought this up earlier, also being able to look at the variety of records that you do have, you're going to see some differences in support needs. So that is helpful too, to come, with that knowledge of, well, I did review a record where somebody has lower support needs. I did review a record where somebody has higher support needs. And then, when you're looking at our guidance in that informational packet, kind of taking that into consideration as well. Other questions? These are great questions, by the way. And a great slide, Jody. Just since we do have a little time, is everyone clear on like the day of the in-person? Are there any other like kind of logistical questions that people might have now that we can either answer right now or get the answer to? And in your packet, I believe you have this, which is showing, where you are in the schedule. So you can look through that too and just kind of make sure you're ready to come. If you do run into any issues, with scheduling, I hope you will reach out to us as soon as you possibly can.
And as just that loop around back to the beginning, your job, if you choose to accept it or if you don't choose to accept it, is 10 pre-review forms. You're going to review those 10 files that you have the information on, and you're going to fill out and bring with you 10 forms and let anybody know if there's any issues that you run into in the meantime. But that is the challenge as of right now.
And also reach out to us if you're having trouble getting through them. We need, those to be able to do this process. So please reach out to us if we need to like troubleshoot or problem solve with you. I know this is posted everywhere, but I'm going to go ahead and put Jody's email in the chat too, just so you have it. Jessica, I'm happy to put yours in as well, but I forgot it now. So maybe everyone has it on like whatever the equivalent is of speed dial on their computers, favorites.
I think most people have it, but I will put it in the chat just in case.
Okay, thank you. Well, I thank you all for coming today and for really participating in the discussion and agreeing to do this. I think we all think that having including people who are either people who receive services or really involved in the lives of people who receive services make this a much better process. And we're looking forward to hearing from you all and kind of getting your ideas on the framework that we've developed to date and figuring out what we can do to make it better.
And thank you for your time this afternoon. I know it was long, but thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Afternoon.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.